The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Federation for almost 200 years. Earth's children now lived on dozens of worlds scattered across the galaxy. They built cities, mined precious metals, and tried to live in peace with the other alien races that shared the stars. Commander Jake Harrison stood in the meeting room of the space vessel Endeavour, looking out at the swirling blue and green planet below. Kepler 442b was a beautiful world, rich with rare minerals that Earth desperately needed for its growing colonies. The planet was empty of intelligent life, perfect for mining operations. But the Zephrian Empire claimed it belonged to them. Jake was tired. He had been talking with the Zephrians for 3 weeks now, trying to reach some kind of agreement. The humans were willing to share the planet, to split the mining rights fairly. They offered technology, trade agreements, even cultural exchanges. But the Zephrians wanted everything for themselves. The meeting room doors slid open with a soft hiss. War Chief Thax entered, his scales gleaming under the artificial lights. He was tall, even for a Zephrian, standing nearly 8 feet high. His reptilian face showed no emotion as he looked down at Jake with cold, yellow eyes. "Human," Thax said, his voice like gravel grinding together. "Have you come to surrender your false claims to this world?" Jake kept his face calm, though inside he felt his patience wearing thin. "War Chief Thax, we've been over this many times. The Federation Charter clearly states that uninhabited worlds can be claimed by any member species for peaceful development. We're not asking you to leave, we're asking you to share." Thax laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. "Share? Your weak species thinks the galaxy owes you kindness. You humans crawled out of your little mudball 2 centuries ago and somehow convinced the Federation to let you join. But you are nothing. Soft creatures who know nothing of real strength." Behind Thax stood 3 other Zephrian officers. They all wore the same expression of contempt. To them, humans were a joke, a species that had gained Federation membership through luck and clever words, not through the military might that the Zephrians respected. "We've survived and thrived on dozens of worlds," Jake said quietly. "Our colonies are peaceful and productive. We've never started a war or threatened another species." "Doesn't that count for something?" "It counts for weakness," Thax snarled. "Your people run from conflict like frightened animals. You negotiate and compromise instead of taking what you want. This is why you will never be respected in this galaxy." Jake felt a flash of anger but pushed it down. He thought of the human colonies spread across space, filled with families who just wanted to live their lives in peace. Children playing in parks under alien suns. Scientists making discoveries that helped all the Federation species. Teachers and doctors and engineers building a better future. "Perhaps we should table this discussion," Jake suggested. "I can contact Earth for new instructions. Maybe we can find a compromise that works for everyone." "There is no compromise," Thax said, stepping closer. "The Zephrian Empire has decided. All human presence in the Outer Rim territories will cease. You have 30 days to remove your people and your ships. After that, we will remove them for you." The threat hung in the air like poison. Jake felt his heart rate increase, but he kept his voice steady. "War Chief, that's not a negotiation. That's an ultimatum. Hundreds of thousands of humans live in those territories. They have homes, businesses, entire lives built there. Then they should have built them somewhere else," Thax replied with a shrug. "The strong take what they want. The weak accept what they are given. This is the way of the universe." Before Jake could respond, the air in the room began to shimmer. Cold feeling washed over everyone present, like standing in the shadow of a mountain. The lights dimmed without any technical reason, and a presence made itself known. The figure that appeared was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was tall and thin, wrapped in what looked like starlight itself. Its face was ancient beyond measure, with eyes that seemed to hold the memories of entire civilizations. This was a Void Watcher, one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. "I bring a warning," the entity said, its voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. The sleeping giant stirs when cornered. Humanity's true nature lies dormant, but provocation awakens what should remain buried. Thax sneered at the apparition, more mystical nonsense from a dying race. Your people are as weak as the humans, old one. The age of your influence is over. The Void Watcher turned its ancient gaze to the Zephrian leader. I have watched the rise and fall of 1,000 species. I have seen empires that thought themselves invincible crumble to dust. Some warnings come only once. Your warnings mean nothing, Thax said, though Jake noticed the other Zephrian officers had stepped back slightly. We have the strongest fleet in this sector. Our warriors are bred for conquest. These humans have no military tradition worth mentioning. The Void Watcher looked at Jake then, and for a moment, the human commander felt as though the entity was seeing deep into his soul, into the history of his species, into things that humanity had chosen to forget when they joined the peaceful Federation. The choice has always been yours, the Void Watcher said softly. Peace or war, restraint or release. But remember, young species of Earth, that choices have consequences, and some consequences cannot be undone. With those words, the entity faded away like morning mist, leaving only the echo of its warning hanging in the suddenly warm air. Thax shook his head dismissively. Superstitious fools. The Void Watchers cling to their ancient fears because they cannot accept that stronger species have replaced them. He turned back to Jake, his yellow eyes hard as stone. 30 days, human. Remove your people, or we will do it for you. Jake felt something shift inside him as he watched the Zephrian delegation leave. It was subtle, like a door opening somewhere, deep in his mind. For 200 years, humanity had chosen to be peaceful. They had hidden their true capabilities, hoping to build a better future among the stars. But as he looked out at the planet below, Jake wondered if that time was coming to an end. He activated his communication device and sent a priority message to Earth. The transmission would take several hours to reach home, but Jake knew that what he had to report would change everything. The Zephrians had made their choice. They had ignored the warning of the universe itself. As the Endeavor prepared to leave the Kepler system, Jake stood in his quarters looking at an old photograph of Earth. His grandfather had been a soldier in the last great war before humanity reached the stars. The old man had told him stories about what humans could do when they were pushed too far, about the sleeping strength that lay hidden in their peaceful nature. They were warned, Jake whispered to himself, thinking of Thax and his arrogant threats. The universe itself warned them, and they chose to ignore it. He sealed the photograph away and began preparing his report. In 30 days, the Zephrians would learn what the Void Watcher had tried to tell them. Some sleeping giants should never be awakened. And humanity had been sleeping for a very long time. The countdown had begun. 3 weeks had passed since Commander Jake Harrison returned to Earth with news of the Zephrian ultimatum. The Federation Council had tried to mediate, but War Chief Thax refused all compromise. He wanted the humans gone from the outer territories, and he wanted them to know they were being forced out by superior strength. President Alex Thompson sat in his office in Geneva, looking at reports from the threatened colonies. New Denver had 47,000 residents, mostly miners and their families. Port Victoria housed 32,000 people working the asteroid belts. Harmony Station was smaller, only 18,000, but it was home to some of Earth's most important research facilities. Sir, the evacuation ships are ready, said his aide, Nancy Williams, but the colonists don't want to leave. Many of them have lived there for generations. It's their home. President Thompson rubbed his tired eyes. I know, but we can't risk. Civilian lives over mining rights. Order the evacuations to begin immediately. We'll find them new homes. Dr. Lisa Martinez stood in the archives of the Federation Library on Luna, Earth's moon. She had been researching the Void Watchers ever since Jake's report arrived. What she found made her blood run cold. The Void Watchers were older than any other known species. They had witnessed the birth and death of dozens of galactic civilizations. And according to the records, their warnings had never been wrong. Computer, show me all historical references to Void Watcher predictions, she said, the holographic display filled with data. The Krillian Empire had ignored a Void Watcher warning about expanding too fast. They collapsed within 50 years. The Synthetic Collective had dismissed warnings about creating artificial life without safeguards. They destroyed themselves in a robot uprising. Over and over the pattern repeated. Species that ignored Void Watcher warnings faced terrible consequences. Lisa opened the communication channel to Earth. Mr. President, I need to speak with you immediately. What we learned about the Void Watchers... We need to take their warning seriously. Meanwhile, in the outer territories, Captain Ben Rodriguez commanded the patrol vessel Liberty. It was a small ship designed for rescue operations and colony supply runs. Ben had been born on New Denver and knew every family in the mining settlement. Today, he was helping coordinate the evacuation. Liberty to New Denver Control, Ben spoke into his communicator. We have transport ships incoming, estimated arrival in 6 hours. Begin moving essential personnel to the evacuation points. Understood. Liberty, came the reply from Colony Director Paul Anderson. Ben, the people here don't want to go. This is their home. Some families have been here for 3 generations. I know, Paul, but we have our orders. The Zephrians mean business this time. What Ben didn't know was that Thax had already decided that 30 days was too long. The Zephrian war chief had convinced his high command that a swift, brutal attack would send a clear message to all the galaxy's weaker species. The humans would serve as an example of what happened to those who challenged Zephrian authority. The attack came without warning. Ben was reviewing evacuation schedules when his ship's alarms began screaming. Red lights flashed across the bridge as his sensor officer, Lieutenant Sam Carter, looked up with fear in his eyes. Captain, we have multiple contacts dropping out. Of hyperspace, large vessels, Zephrian design. They're not responding to communication attempts. Ben felt his stomach drop. How many ships? 15. No, 20. Captain, they're launching fighters and ... They're targeting the colonies. The first bombs fell on New Denver while Ben watched in horror. The Zephrian attack was not surgical or precise. They targeted everything. The mining facilities exploded in brilliant flashes. The residential areas were hit next, apartment buildings collapsing as families tried to flee. The school where Ben had learned to read was vaporized in seconds. Get us to the surface now, Ben ordered. We have to save who we can. Liberty dove toward the burning colony, dodging Zephrian fighters that seemed intent on destroying anything that moved. Ben's crew worked frantically to pick up survivors. They managed to load 2,000 people before the Zephrians began targeting rescue ships directly. Captain, we have to go, Sam said, tears running down his face. If we stay, we'll all die, and these people will die with us. Ben looked back at the burning remains of his home. Thousands of people were still down there, men, women, children. People he had grown up with, people he loved. Signal the fleet. Tell them ... Tell them what happened here. Make sure everyone knows. As Liberty jumped to hyperspace, carrying the survivors to safety, similar scenes played out at Port Victoria and Harmony Station. The attacks were coordinated and merciless. The Zephrians didn't just destroy military targets. They hit hospitals, schools, and civilian shelters. They wanted to send a message that went beyond simple conquest. They wanted to instill terror. The footage reached Earth within hours. President Thompson sat in the emergency session of the Defense Council, watching the recordings that Captain Rodriguez had transmitted. The images were horrific. Bodies in the streets. Buildings reduced to rubble. Children crying for parents who would never answer. How many? Thompson asked quietly. Defense Minister Carol Jackson looked at her tablet with shaking hands. Early estimates suggest over 40,000 dead. Most of the casualties were civilians. They targeted evacuation centers, Mr. President. They deliberately killed people trying to flee. The room fell silent. These weren't soldiers or combatants. They were farmers, teachers, shop owners, and their families. People whose only crime was being human in territory that the Zephrians wanted. Admiral Kate. Sullivan stood up slowly. She was a career officer who had spent her life maintaining Earth's small, peaceful defense force. But as she looked at the images of burning colonies, something changed in her eyes. "Mr. President," she said, her voice steady but cold, "we need to show them what humans are truly capable of." Thompson looked around the room at his advisors. These were people who had spent their careers building peaceful relationships with alien species. They had worked for decades to establish humanity as a responsible member of the galactic community. But the images on the screen had changed everything. "Admiral Sullivan," Thompson said carefully, "what exactly are you suggesting?" "Sir, for 200 years we've hidden our true capabilities. We've played the role of peaceful newcomers because we believed it would lead to a better galaxy. But they've just murdered 40,000 of our people. Children, Mr. President, they killed children." Thompson was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the Void Watcher's warning, about humanity's true nature lying dormant, about what happened. "When sleeping giants were awakened, what would you need?" he asked. "Authorization for Protocol Omega," Sullivan replied. "Full activation of Soul Defense Network. And permission to show the galaxy what humanity really is." Thompson looked once more at the footage from New Denver. At the burning buildings and the bodies in the streets. At Captain Rodriguez's desperate transmission as he tried to save who he could from the slaughter. "Authorized," he said quietly. "All protocols are authorized. Admiral, you have complete operational authority. Show them what we are." As the meeting ended, deep in the Rocky Mountains, facilities that had been dark for 2 centuries began to wake up. Hidden weapons platforms in the asteroid belt powered up their reactors. On Mars, training facilities that the galaxy thought were research stations opened their real purpose. The Zephrians had made their choice. They had ignored the warning of the universe itself. Now they would learn what the Void Watcher had tried to tell them. Some sleeping giants should never be awakened. And humanity had been sleeping for a very long time. Dr. Carl Morrison had spent his entire career studying human military history. Now, as he stood before the Earth Defense Council, he felt the weight of that knowledge pressing down on him. The other council members looked confused as he opened his presentation. They didn't understand what humanity had been hiding from itself and the galaxy. "Gentlemen, ladies," Carl began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "For 200 years we have deliberately hidden our true nature. We told ourselves and the galaxy that we were a peaceful species. We believed this lie so completely that we almost forgot who we really are." He activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Images of ancient battles, great wars, and military innovations filled the air above the conference table. Humanity didn't reach the stars because we were peaceful. We reached them because we survived everything our world could throw at us. Wars, plagues, disasters, we are a species forged in conflict. President Thompson leaned forward. "What exactly are you saying, Doctor?" "I'm saying that the humans who joined the Galactic Federation were not typical humans, sir. They were humans who had chosen to suppress their natural instincts. We convinced ourselves that our warlike past was something to be ashamed of. But War Chief facts just reminded us why those instincts exist." Admiral Kate Sullivan nodded grimly. "Show them the real numbers, Carl." Carl's hands moved across the control panel. "Earth's official defense budget shows we spend less on military than any other Federation species. But that's because most of our real military infrastructure has been classified as civilian projects. Our asteroid mining operations, half of them are actually shipyards. Our communication satellites, weapons platforms, our Mars research stations, training facilities for the most elite military forces ever assembled." The council members stared at the data in shock. General Frank Williams, head of Earth's officially peaceful defense force, spoke up. "Are you telling us we've been building a secret military for 2 centuries? "Not secret," Sullivan corrected. "Hidden in plain sight. Every human military officer knows about Protocol Omega. We just never thought we'd need to use it. We hoped we never would." Carl continued his briefing. The Zephrians think they understand warfare because they've conquered weaker species. But they've never faced an enemy like humanity. We don't just fight wars, we study them. We perfect them, we turn combat into an art form. On the other side of the solar system, Captain Amy Foster stood on the bridge of what the Federation records listed as an exploration vessel called Horizon, but Amy knew better. Horizon was a battleship, one of 50 that Earth had built under the cover of peaceful exploration missions. "Captain," her tactical officer, Lieutenant Greg Hayes, reported, "we're receiving activation codes from Earth Command. Old defense protocols are now active." Amy felt a familiar weight settle on her shoulders. She had trained for this moment her entire career, but she had hoped it would never come. "Signal the fleet, all ships to battle stations. We're going to show the Zephrians what human engineering can do." The transformation was remarkable. Across the solar system, peaceful civilian facilities revealed their true purpose. Mining platforms extended weapon arrays. Research stations launched squadrons of fighters. Cargo ships opened their holds to reveal advanced military hardware, the sole defense network had been Earth's greatest secret. What appeared to be a simple communication and navigation system was actually the most sophisticated military network ever created. Every human ship, station, and colony was connected. Information flowed between them instantly. Orders could be transmitted and executed across dozens of star systems in perfect coordination. On Mars, Colonel Rick Hamilton watched as his training facility dropped its civilian disguise. For decades, the galaxy had thought it was an agricultural research center. In reality, it was where humanity trained its most elite soldiers. Men and women who had spent years learning to fight in zero-gravity, hostile atmospheres, and alien environments. "Sir," his aide Captain Julie Barnes reported, "we have authorization for full deployment." "Earth Command wants our best units ready for immediate action," Rick nodded. "Signal Alpha Company. Tell them it's time to show the galaxy what human soldiers can really do." The first test came at the Proxima Centauri system. The Zephrians had sent a fleet to secure what they thought was an isolated human outpost. War Chief Thax himself led the attack, confident that his reputation for crushing weak enemies would grow even stronger. Captain Amy Foster's fleet was waiting for them. The battle began like every Zephrian victory before it. They charged in with overwhelming force, expecting the humans to flee or surrender, but something was different this time. The human ships didn't run. Instead, they moved with a precision that made the Zephrian commanders nervous. "Human vessels," Thax broadcast, "on all frequencies, you are outnumbered 3-1. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Amy's response was calm and cold. "War Chief Thax, you were warned by the universe itself. You chose to ignore that warning. Now you'll learn why." The humans attacked with tactics that confused and terrified the Zephrians. Ships that appeared to retreat would suddenly become hunters, striking from impossible angles. Weapons that seemed to miss their targets were actually setting up devastating follow-up attacks. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. Lieutenant Greg Hayes monitored the tactical display with growing excitement. "Captain, their formation is falling apart. They can't adapt to our movement patterns." "That's because they fight like animals," Amy replied. "All instinct and aggression, we fight like humans. With our minds." The Zephrian fleet tried to board the human space station at Proxima, thinking they could use their superior size and strength to overwhelm the defenders. They were wrong. Colonel Rick Hamilton's Marines were waiting for them. The aliens discovered that humans in close combat were terrifying opponents. Where the Zephrians relied on brute force, the humans used speed, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to give up. Every human soldier fought like the survival of their entire species depended on their individual actions. "They don't fight like any species we've encountered," reported Sub-Commander Vex to Thax as his boarding teams were systematically destroyed. "They adapt to our tactics instantly. They turn our own weapons against us. And they never retreat, even when outnumbered." Thax felt something he had never experienced before: fear. How many humans are on that station? Our intelligence said 200, but they're fighting like 2,000. Sir, we need to withdraw. We're losing too many warriors. The retreat from Proxima was a disaster for the Zephrians. What should have been an easy victory became a humiliating defeat. The humans had revealed capabilities that no Federation intelligence had ever suspected. Ships that moved faster than they should. Weapons that hit harder than the specifications suggested. Soldiers who fought with a skill that seemed impossible for such a young species. As news of the defeat spread through Zephrian space, panic began to set in. How had they so completely misjudged humanity? Their spies had watched human colonies. For decades, they had seen peaceful farmers, scientists, and traders. They had seen no evidence of military strength. War Chief Thax returned to his flagship, his confidence shattered. The humans hadn't just defeated his fleet. They had done it while taking minimal casualties themselves. It was the kind of lopsided victory that the Zephrians usually inflicted on others on Earth. Dr. Lisa Martinez was analyzing the reports from Proxima when she made a disturbing discovery. The Void Watcher's warning hadn't been about humanity's military technology, it had been about something deeper. Something that made humans fundamentally different from every other species in the galaxy. Admiral Sullivan, she transmitted to the fleet. I think I understand what the Void Watcher was trying to tell us. It's not just that we're good at war, it's that we're good at everything, and we apply that ability to war when we have to. As the human fleet prepared for the next phase of their response, the galaxy began to realize that everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. The peaceful species that had joined the Federation 2 centuries ago was revealing itself to be something else entirely. The sleeping giant was awake, and it was very, very angry. The news of humanity's victory at Proxima spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had dismissed humans as weak newcomers began digging through their historical archives. What they found made many of them very uncomfortable. Ambassador Kelra of the Vorthan Republic stood before her council, reading from ancient Federation records. Her people were traders and diplomats, masters of gathering information from across the galaxy. But somehow, they had missed something very important about their human allies. The archaeological evidence is clear, Kelra announced to her fellow Vorthans. Human ancestors were warriors for thousands of years before they reached the stars. They fought wars that killed millions of their own kind. They developed weapons that could destroy entire cities. They created military strategies that other species never needed to imagine. Elder Nix, the oldest member of the Vorthan Council, spoke in his whispered voice. How did we miss this? Our intelligence networks monitor all Federation species. Because they hid it from themselves, Kelra replied. The humans who joined the Federation wanted to leave their violent past behind. They convinced themselves they were a peaceful species. But War Chief Thax has reminded them what they really are. In the Zephrian Empire, panic was spreading through the High Command. The defeat at Proxima had shaken their confidence, but it was what came next that truly frightened them. Human ships began appearing deep in Zephrian territory, striking at targets that should have been impossible to reach. Captain Steve Murphy commanded the strike force that hit the Zephrian supply depot at Kalar Prime. His mission was not to conquer territory or destroy cities. It was to send a message. The humans could strike anywhere, anytime, and there was nothing the Zephrians could do to stop them. Remember, Steve told his crew as they approached the target, we hit military targets only, no civilian casualties. We're not like them. The attack on Kalar Prime was surgical and devastating. The humans destroyed the weapons factories, the military shipyards, and the command centers, but they carefully avoided the civilian areas. When Zephrian families ran from their homes in panic, human soldiers directed them to safety. Commander Vex, who had survived the disaster at Proxima, watched the attack from his command bunker. Why don't they kill the civilians? He asked. His aide, they could destroy the entire city. Why do they show mercy? His aide, a young Zephrian named Crix, looked confused. Perhaps they are weak, sir. Perhaps they lacked the stomach for real war? But Vex shook his head. He had fought the humans at Proxima. He had seen what they could do when they chose violence. No, he said quietly. They're not weak. They're something much worse. They're disciplined. They could kill us all, but they choose not to. That makes them more dangerous than any enemy we've ever faced. The precision of the human attacks was what terrified the Zephrian leadership most. Human fleets appeared where they shouldn't be able to reach. Supply lines were cut with surgical precision. Communication networks were infiltrated and turned against them. The Zephrians began to realize they were fighting an enemy that thought. Several moves ahead. Dr. Lisa Martinez had been assigned to the Federation Council as humanity's strategic advisor. Her job was to explain to the other species how human warfare worked. It was not an easy task. Most species see war as a last resort. She explained to the assembled delegates. Something you do when diplomacy fails. But humans have incorporated strategic thinking into every aspect of our society. We study conflict the same way we study science or art. Ambassador Exten of the Crystalline Confederation raised one of his glowing appendages. Are you saying humans are naturally violent? No, Lisa replied carefully. I'm saying we're naturally adaptive. When we need to be peaceful, we excel at peace. When we need to fight, we excel at war. The problem is that most species never needed to become truly good at fighting. You develop space travel and join the galactic community without facing the kind of conflicts that shape humanity. The truth was becoming clear to anyone who cared to look. Earth's history was filled with wars, but it was also filled with the innovations that those wars produced. Humans had learned to coordinate massive operations across vast distances. They had developed technologies that seemed impossible to other species. They had created military doctrines that treated war as both science and art. War Chief Thax sat in his command chamber, staring at reports of human attacks across his empire. In 3 weeks, they had crippled his fleet, destroyed his supply lines, and turned his own officers against him. The Zephrian Empire, which had seemed invincible just a month ago, was falling apart. How many ships do we have left? He asked his aide. Less than half the original fleet, sir. Many commanders are refusing orders. They say fighting humans is suicide. Thax felt the weight of his failures crushing down on him. He had ignored the Void Watcher's warning. He had dismissed humanity as weak. He had ordered the slaughter of innocent civilians. Now his empire was paying the price. General Linda Clark led the human ground forces that liberated the prisoners taken during the initial attacks on the colonies. What her soldiers found in the Zephrian prison camps made even hardened veterans angry. The aliens hadn't just killed human civilians. They had tortured the survivors. Sir, reported Captain Tony Rodriguez, Ben's younger brother who had joined the rescue mission, we found them. The prisoners from New Denver and Port Victoria. But ma'am, what they did to these people... Linda looked at the freed prisoners and felt something cold settle in her chest. These were families, children, elderly people who had done nothing wrong. Except live in territory the Zephrians wanted. The evidence of torture was clear. Burns, broken bones, psychological trauma that would take years to heal. Get them medical attention immediately, she ordered. And document everything. I want records of what was done here. As word of the prison camps spread through the human fleet, the last restraints on their anger began to break. This wasn't just about territory anymore. This wasn't just about mining rights or diplomatic disputes. The Zephrians had shown their true nature, and humanity responded with its own. Captain Amy Foster's fleet surrounded the Zephrian homeworld within a month of the war's beginning. The sight of human ships blockading the seat of their empire broke what remained of Zephrian resistance. These were the same humans they had dismissed as weak. The same species they thought they could bully into submission. The Zephrian High Command sent desperate messages to the Federation Council, begging for intervention. The same officials who had supported Thax's aggression now pleaded for someone to save them from human retaliation. The humans are not negotiating, reported High Commander Zarks to the Federation emergency session. They demand unconditional Surrender? They want war crimes trials? They want our military capabilities dismantled. These are not the terms of a reasonable peace. But the Federation had seen the footage from the human prison camps. They had watched the evidence of Zephrian brutality. Many species that had once been neutral now openly supported the human position. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking down at the Zephrian homeworld. The planet was beautiful from space, with blue oceans and green continents that reminded her of Earth. It was hard to believe that such a lovely world had produced a species capable of such cruelty. "Admiral," her communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's War Chief Thax. He wants to negotiate." Sullivan looked at the planet below, thinking of the burned colonies and the tortured prisoners. Thinking of the 40,000 humans who had died simply because they were in the wrong place. When the Zephrians decided to send a message, "Tell him," she said quietly, "that the time for negotiation was before he ignored the universe's warning. Now there is only justice." The galaxy watched and waited as humanity's fleet surrounded the Zephrian homeworld. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and everyone could see its true power. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The Federation Council chamber had never seen an emergency session like this one. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the crisis that was reshaping their galaxy. The Zephrian Empire, once a dominant force in the outer territories, was on the verge of complete collapse. Human fleets surrounded their homeworld while their military forces surrendered system by system. Chancellor Voth of the Galactic Federation called the session to order with visible nervousness. The tall, blue-skinned leader had spent decades maintaining peace between competing species, but he had never dealt with anything like humanity's response to the Zephrian attacks. "We are here," Voth announced, "to discuss terms for ending the conflict between the Zephrian Empire and humanity. The Federation offers to mediate negotiations between both parties." Admiral Kate Sullivan sat at the human delegation table, her uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's Defense Force. Beside her sat President Alex Thompson, who had traveled personally to oversee the talks. The expression on both their faces was calm but unyielding. "Chancellor Voth," Admiral Sullivan spoke clearly, "humanity appreciates the Federation's concern. But this is not a conflict between equal parties. This is a response to unprovoked genocide. We will accept nothing less than unconditional surrender, full reparations for the families destroyed, and guarantees that such atrocities will never be repeated." The Zephrian delegate, High Commander Zarks, hissed in frustration. "These terms are impossible. You ask us to dismantle our entire military structure. You demand war crimes trials for our leadership. This is not peace, it is conquest." President Thompson leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of 40,000 dead civilians. "High Commander, your forces attacked colonies full of families. You targeted schools and hospitals, you tortured prisoners. Did you expect us to simply forgive and forget?" "The Zephrian way is strength," Zarks replied desperately. "We believed you were weak. We thought you would submit to superior force." "You were wrong," Thompson said simply. "The universe itself warned you through the Void Watcher. You chose to ignore that warning. Now you face the consequences." As if summoned by the mention of its name, the air in the chamber began to shimmer. The same cold presence that had appeared during Jake Harrison's negotiations with War Chief Thax now manifested before the entire Federation Council. The Void Watcher materialized in the center of the chamber, its ancient form radiating power. That made every delegate fall silent. "The sleeping giant has awakened," the entity said, its voice echoing through dimensions. "Humanity has remembered what it chose to forget. Let this be a lesson to all who would threaten the innocent." The Void Watcher turned its ageless gaze to the Zephrian delegation. "Your species ignored wisdom that has guided the galaxy for millennia. You mistook restraint for weakness. Now you learn the price of such folly." High Commander Zarks tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. The presence of the Void Watcher seemed to strip away all pretense, leaving only the truth of what his people had done. The humans could destroy your homeworld, the Void Watcher continued. They could reduce your empire to ash and scatter your people to the void. They have the power and the right. That they choose mercy shows a wisdom your species lacks. Chancellor Voth found his voice first. Ancient One, what would you have us do? The Void Watcher looked at each delegation in turn, except that the galaxy has changed. Humanity has taken its place as a major power, not through conquest, but through the defense of justice. Those who threaten peace will face consequences they cannot imagine. With those words, the entity faded away, leaving the chamber in stunned silence on the Zephrian homeworld. War Chief Thax sat in his personal quarters, watching human ships patrol the skies above his capital city. His empire was finished. His military was scattered or surrendered. His people lived in fear of retaliation that might never come. A communication chime drew his attention. The message was from Admiral Sullivan, requesting a private meeting. Thax almost laughed at the irony. The human leader wanted to talk, just as he had refused to talk months ago. They met in a neutral location, a Federation diplomatic station orbiting the Zephrian homeworld. Thax entered the meeting room expecting to face his conqueror with whatever dignity he had left. Instead, he found Admiral Sullivan waiting with an expression that was neither triumphant nor cruel. War Chief Thax, she said formally. I wanted to speak with you personally before we finalize the surrender terms. Thax straightened his shoulders. I am prepared to face justice for my actions, but I ask that you spare my people. They followed my orders. Sullivan studied him for a moment. Your people will not be harmed. Civilians never pay the price for their leaders' mistakes. That's the difference between us and you. Why? Thax asked, genuine confusion in his voice. We slaughtered your colonies. We tortured your people. You have every right to seek revenge. Because revenge is not justice, Sullivan replied. And because showing mercy to those who don't deserve it is what separates civilization from barbarism. Your people will learn to live in peace, or they will face the consequences, but they will have the chance to choose. 3 days later, the formal surrender took place aboard Admiral Sullivan's flagship. War Chief Thax signed the documents that dissolved the Zephrian military, established reparations for human losses, and placed his people under Federation oversight. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions who had never imagined they would see the mighty Zephrian Empire brought to its knees. Captain Jake Harrison, whose diplomatic mission had started the crisis, stood witness to its end. The peaceful negotiator had become a military coordinator, helping to plan the operations that dismantled Zephrian power. But as he watched Thax sign the surrender, Jake felt no satisfaction, only sadness for all the lives that could have been saved if the Zephrians had simply listened. The aftermath of the war reshaped galactic politics completely. Species that had ignored Earth's diplomatic efforts now sought alliance with humanity. Trade agreements were renegotiated. Defense pacts were signed with worlds that suddenly realized they needed human protection. Dr. Lisa Martinez returned to her research, but her focus had changed. She now studied how humanity's revelation would affect the galaxy's future. Other species were adapting quickly, trying to understand the implications of having such a powerful neighbor. The interesting thing, she explained to a gathering of xenobiologists, is that humans didn't change. We were always capable of this level of military effectiveness. We just chose not to use it. The galaxy is safer now that everyone understands what we're capable of because it makes conflict less likely. The human colonies were rebuilt within 2 years, stronger and better defended than before. New Denver rose again on the same world, where it had been destroyed, but this time protected by defense platforms that ensured no surprise attack could ever succeed. The families who had lost loved ones were given new homes and support, though the scars would never fully heal. Captain Ben Rodriguez, who had saved 2,000 people during the attack on New Denver, became the colony's new administrator. He often stood in the Central Park watching children play under alien suns, knowing that their safety was guaranteed by the galaxy's new understanding of human determination. President Thompson addressed the Federation Council one final time. Before returning to Earth, his words became part of galactic history, quoted by diplomats and military leaders for generations to come. For 2 centuries, humanity chose peace. We hid our capabilities because we hoped to build a better future among the stars. We still want that future. But let no one mistake our choice for weakness. We are capable of great violence when justice demands it, but we prefer to build rather than destroy. The galaxy is safer when everyone understands both truths. Admiral Sullivan remained in command of humanity's expanded fleet, patrolling the territories where human colonies thrived. Her ships bore a simple message transmitted on all frequencies: humanity protects the innocent, choose peace. The Void Watcher's final message resonated across space, reaching every world and every species. The universe has many sleeping giants. Humanity was but one of them. Choose your provocations wisely, for some warnings come only once. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity's place among the stars was secure, earned not through conquest but through the defense of justice. And in the rebuilt colonies where children played and families rebuilt their lives, the echo of that lesson would endure forever.